The council chamber was full when the human delegation arrived. Every seat was taken. Representatives from all 47 species had gathered to watch humanity submit. It was a ceremony they had performed countless times before. A new species would stand in the center of the chamber, bow its head, and accept the integration protocols. Then they would become another part of the great machine that the council had built over 12,000 years. No one expected anything different today. High Arbiter Veloz sat in his throne above the chamber, his ancient eyes watching the small group of humans walk to the center of the floor. Ambassador Kang Hana led them, her steps steady and unhurried. Admiral Park Minho walked behind her with his hands clasped behind his back. Dr. Lee Yuna carried a small tablet, and Captain Kwon Tae-woo, who had been allowed to join them for this occasion, stood at the back with his arms crossed and a strange smile on his face. "Humanity," Veloz announced, his voice filling the chamber. "3 cycles have passed. The Council is prepared to hear your response to the integration protocols. Speak." Ambassador Kang Hana stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. Thousands of alien eyes watched her, waiting for the words they had heard so many times before. She lifted the tablet that Dr. Lee Yuna had given her and began to read the demands aloud. First, humanity will surrender 60% of its colonized systems to Council administration. She paused. Second, humanity's military will be limited to 50 vessels. Another pause. Third, all humans will submit to genetic cataloging for galactic security purposes. The chamber waited. Fourth, humanity will adopt the Council's standardized government model and dissolve its current political structures. Veloz nodded approvingly. The human was reading the terms carefully. This was respect. Fifth, humanity will discontinue all cultural and religious practices deemed destabilizing by the Council. Kang Hana lowered the tablet. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of faces watching her. Insectoids and reptilians, and beings made of light, and creatures with no eyes at all. 12,000 years of galactic civilization waiting for her to kneel. And then she laughed. It started small, just a quiet chuckle, but it grew. It became a real laugh, deep and genuine, the kind of laugh that comes from true joy. It echoed through the silent chamber like nothing the aliens had ever heard before. Delegate Morath shot to his feet. What is this? What is she doing? Other species began to murmur. Some of them had never heard laughter before. Among the Veth, Veloz's species, such a sound indicated brain damage. Among the Koran, it was a sign of complete surrender to madness. The chamber erupted in confused noise. But Kang Hana kept laughing. Admiral Park Minho stood behind her with a calm expression, but his eyes were bright. Captain Tae-woo was grinning like a man who had just won a great prize. Lee Yuna watched the chaos spreading through the chamber and allowed herself a small smile. Finally, Veloz raised one of his many arms, and the chamber fell silent again. "Ambassador," he said, his voice cold, "explain yourself." Kang Hana wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "Forgive me, High Arbiter. I was not laughing at you. I was laughing at the idea that these demands would frighten us." The silence in the chamber became absolute. "You have studied our species," Kang Hana continued. "You know our history. Then you know that we are not strangers to impossible odds. 6 times our world nearly killed us. Ice ages froze our ancestors in their caves. Plagues wiped out half our population. We invented weapons that could burn our entire planet to ash, and we almost used them. We poisoned our own air and water. We have done more damage to ourselves than any enemy could dream of doing." She paused, letting the words settle. "And yet we are still here. We crawled out of extinction again and again. We buried our dead, rebuilt our cities, and kept going. Not because we are the strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy, but because we do not know how to surrender. Delegate Morath slammed his fist against his seat. This is arrogance beyond belief. These mammals dare to refuse the council? Kang Hana turned to look at him directly. Yes, Delegate, we dare. She faced Velas again. We have read your history as well. We know what happened to species that refused your guidance. The Ventari who became slaves. The Orath who became ashes. You have been doing this for 12,000 years because it works. Because everyone submits or dies. She took one step forward. But you have never met humans. And here is our answer to your integration protocols. The chamber was so quiet that everyone could hear her breathe. No. The word hung in the air like a blade. We will not surrender our worlds. Those colonies were built by human hands, human sweat, human dreams. They belong to us. Morath hissed with rage. We will not limit our ships. We will build as many as we need to protect our people. Velas's eyes narrowed. We will not give you our genetic codes. Our bodies are our own. Our children are our own. You will not touch them. Dr. Lee Yuna felt tears in her eyes. We will not destroy our governments. They are imperfect, but they are ours. We will fix them ourselves. Admiral Park Minho stood a little straighter. And we will not abandon our cultures, our religions, our songs and stories and traditions. They are who we are. They are what carried us through the darkness, every time our world tried to kill us. Kang Hana spread her arms wide, addressing the entire chamber. You offer us slavery disguised as protection. You offer us extinction disguised as integration. So here is what humanity offers you instead. We offer negotiation between equals. We offer friendship and trade and alliance. We offer a hand extended in peace. Her voice hardened. But if you want to take what is ours, you will have to fight us for it. And we are very, very good at fighting. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate military action. Others looked at the humans with something that might have been respect. Observer Silith of the Aeon sat in her place and watched the small human woman with great interest. She could sense emotions that other species could not. And what she sensed from the human delegation was not fear or desperation. It was joy. They were enjoying this. High Arbiter Velas raised his arms, and silence returned. You have chosen poorly, Ambassador. The Koran hegemony has offered to correct your species. I have authorized them to do so. Delegate Morath stood up, his reptilian face twisted with cruel pleasure. My fleet will be at your borders within the month, human. We will teach you the price of arrogance. Captain Tewu laughed out loud. We'll be waiting, lizard. The delegation turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind them, the galaxy's most powerful civilization watched in shock. For 12,000 years, every species had submitted. Every single one. Until now. As they walked back to their ship, Dr. Lee Yuna looked at Ambassador Kang Hana. That was incredible, she said softly. But what do we do now? Their fleet will destroy us. Now we show them what humans are made of. She looked up at the stars visible through the station's massive windows. Let them come. 3 weeks after humanity refused the integration protocols, the Koran fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Saturn. They were massive vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could withstand nuclear explosions. They had conquered a dozen species and never lost a single battle. Delegate Morath stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the distant blue dot that was Earth. He smiled with all of his sharp teeth. Begin the approach, he ordered. We will be home in time for the celebration feast. But Admiral Park Minho had not been idle. For 3 weeks, Every shipyard on Earth and its colonies had worked without rest. 80 warships now waited in formation near Titan, Saturn's largest moon. It was not enough to match the Corin in direct combat. Park Min-ho knew that, so he had no intention of fighting directly. "Remember your training," he said over the fleet-wide channel. "Remember what Dr. Lee taught us about their tactics. The Corin are strong, but they are predictable. They fight in rigid formations. They follow their commanders without question. They expect their enemies to do the same." He paused. "We are not going to do the same." Captain Quan Tae-woo commanded the assault wing from his ship, the HFY. He had hand-picked every pilot under his command, choosing the boldest and most unpredictable officers in the fleet. "All wings, report status," he said. "Alpha wing ready. Beta wing ready. Gamma wing ready. Wolf pack standing by." This last group was Tae-woo's personal squadron, 12 ships crewed entirely by volunteers who had signed forms acknowledging they would probably die. "Let's show these lizards how humans fight." The Battle of Titan's Reach began at 0600 hours, Earth Standard Time. The Corin fleet advanced in perfect formation, their ships arranged in precise geometric patterns that had won them countless victories. Morath watched the small human fleet and felt only contempt. The mammals were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were weaker. This would be over in hours. Then the humans did something strange. Instead of forming defensive lines, they scattered. Ships flew in every direction, breaking into small groups that moved in chaotic patterns the Corin targeting systems struggled to track. They darted between Saturn's moons, using the gravity wells to slingshot themselves at impossible angles. "What are they doing?" Morath demanded. His tactical officer stared at his display in confusion. "I don't know, Delegate. This matches no known combat doctrine. They're fighting like prey animals running from predators, then hunt them down." The Corin fleet broke formation to pursue. This was their first mistake. As soon as the enemy ships separated, human squadrons turned and attacked from multiple directions at once. They hit supply ships first, then communication relays, then engines. They struck fast and vanished before the Corin could respond. But the most disturbing thing was the noise. Human ships broadcast on all frequencies as they fought. They played music, loud and violent and beautiful. They shouted battle cries in 100 different languages. They laughed and screamed and sang. The Corin had never heard anything like it. Some crews reported that the sounds were affecting their concentration. Others claimed the humans were using psychological weapons. In a way, they were. Humanity had thousands of years of experience fighting itself. They knew that war was not just about weapons and numbers. It was about fear, about confusion, about making your enemy doubt everything they knew. Captain Tae-woo led the wolf pack straight into the heart of the Corin formation. His ships moved like dancers, spinning and rolling in ways that should have been impossible. When a Corin vessel locked onto him, he flew directly at it and veered away at the last second, causing 2 enemy ships to fire on each other. "Come on, you overgrown lizards," he shouted over an open channel. "Is this the best you've got?" Morath heard him and roared with rage. "All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel. Destroy him." But concentrating on Tae-woo left gaps in their defense. Admiral Park Min-ho saw those gaps and sent 3 squadrons through them to attack the Corin command ship directly. The flagship shuddered under the assault, and for the first time, fear flickered in Morath's eyes. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Corin had superior numbers and firepower, but the humans refused to stay still. Every time the aliens thought they had cornered a squadron, it would disappear and reappear somewhere else. Human pilots took risks that the Corin considered suicidal. Some of those risks killed them, but enough survived to keep fighting. Dr. Lee Yuna monitored the battle from the Magunwa, feeding tactical information to the fleet. She had spent 3 weeks studying every Corran battle in recorded history. She knew their patterns better than some Corran commanders did. "Their left flank is weakening," she reported. "They're pulling ships from the rear to reinforce." "I see it," Admiral Park Min-ho replied. "Captain Tae-woo, you have an opening." Tae-woo looked at his display. The Corran command ship was exposed, but getting to it would mean flying through the heaviest concentration of enemy fire. His ship was already damaged. Half his squadron was gone. He thought about Earth, about his family in Daegu, about all the people who were counting on them. "Wolfpack," he said calmly, "begin evacuation procedures. Transfer all crew to escape pods." His first officer stared at him. "Sir? That's an order. Everyone off this ship except me." The crew understood. They had all known this was possible when they volunteered. One by one, they saluted their captain and made their way to the escape pods. Within minutes, the HFY was empty, except for Tae-woo. He activated the ship's engines to maximum power. "Admiral," he said over the communication channel, "it's been an honor." Park Min-ho's voice was thick. "The honor was mine, Captain. Godspeed." The HFY accelerated toward the Corran command ship. Enemy weapons fire tore through its hull, ripping away armor and destroying systems. But Tae-woo kept it flying, through pure skill and stubborn will. Moraf saw the human ship coming and suddenly understood. "Evade!" he screamed. "All ships, evade!" Too late. The HFY struck the command ship at full speed. The explosion was visible from Earth. When it faded, the Corran flagship was gone. 3 other vessels that had been too close were destroyed as well. And in the wreckage, a single escape pod tumbled through space. Inside, Captain Kwon Tae-woo floated in zero gravity, his ribs broken, blood floating around his head, but alive. He had ejected at the last possible second. And he was laughing. The death of their flagship broke the Corran fleet. Without Morat's commands, the rigid hierarchy collapsed. Ships retreated in disorder, jumping to faster-than-light travel and fleeing the system. The Battle of Titan's Reach was over. Humanity had won. On the Mugunghwa, Admiral Park Min-ho sat in his chair and allowed himself to breathe. They had lost 18 ships. Hundreds of good people were dead. But they had faced a fleet that had never been defeated and sent it running. Dr. Lee Yuna appeared at his side. She looked exhausted, but alive. "We have an incoming message," she said quietly. "Not from the Corran, from someone called Observer Silith of the AN." Park Min-ho raised an eyebrow. "What does it say?" Yuna read from her tablet. "The AN are watching. You have our attention. This is the beginning, not the end." The Admiral looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was learning that a young species with inferior technology had just embarrassed one of their most powerful members. The beginning, not the end. He smiled. "Bring Captain Tae-woo home," he ordered. "And someone tell Ambassador Kang Hana that we have a lot to discuss." The war for humanity's freedom had just begun. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Titan's Reach. In that time, the galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. News of humanity's victory spread to every corner of civilized space. A young species with only 80 ships had defeated the Corran hegemony. They had laughed at the Galactic Council and lived. For species who had spent centuries under the Council's rule, it was like watching a door open that they thought was locked forever. Now the human delegation was returning to Station Vega. But this time, they had not been summoned. They had been invited. Ambassador Kang Hana stood on the bridge of the Mugunghwa as it approached the massive ring station. She looked different than she had a year ago. There was more gray in her hair and new lines around her eyes. But she stood taller, and her gaze was even more unshakable than before. His uniform now bore the additional markings of Supreme Commander of United Earth Forces. After the victory, no one else had been considered for the position. Dr. Lee Yuna was reviewing her notes for the 100th time. She had spent the last year establishing diplomatic contacts with species who had reached out to humanity in secret. There were more of them than anyone had expected. The Council's rule was ancient, but it was not loved. And Captain Quan Tae-woo was there too, now promoted to Commodore. His broken ribs had healed, though he still moved carefully sometimes. The scar on his forehead would never fully fade. He wore it like a badge of honor. The council chamber was different this time. The human delegation did not stand in the center like defendants before a court. They had been given seats among the representatives, at the same level as the other species. It was a small thing, but everyone understood what it meant. High Arbiter Velas looked older than before. The past year had not been kind to him. For the first time in his long life, species under council rule were asking questions. Why did they have to follow the integration protocols? Why couldn't they negotiate their own terms? If humans could refuse, why couldn't they? The ancient order was cracking, and Velas knew it. "Humanity," he announced, his voice filling the chamber. "The Council acknowledges your presence. We are prepared to hear your proposal." Ambassador Kang Hana rose from her seat. She looked around at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Many of them had mocked humanity a year ago. Now they waited in silence for her words. "High Arbiter, honored delegates, 1 year ago, I stood in this chamber and told you that humanity would not submit to the integration protocols. That fleet was defeated." Delegate Morath was notably absent from the chamber. After his failure, the Koran hegemony had stripped him of his rank and sent him into exile. Some said he was dead. Others said he was hiding on a distant world, planning revenge. Either way, he was no longer a threat. "But we did not come here to celebrate our victory," Kang Hana continued. "We came here because we believe there is a better way." Dr. Lee Yuna stepped forward and activated a holographic display. It showed the documents humanity had spent months preparing. "We call this the Soul Accords," Yuna said. "It is a new framework for relations between species in this region of space. Not integration protocols, not demands disguised as protection. True agreements between equal partners." She highlighted the key points one by one. First, all species retain full sovereignty over their home systems and colonies. No territory can be transferred without mutual consent. Second, military forces are determined by each species according to their own needs. There are no arbitrary limits. Third, trade and cultural exchange are encouraged, but no species is required to abandon its traditions. Fourth, disputes are resolved through negotiation, not force. Any species that attacks another without provocation will face collective response from all signatories. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. This was revolutionary. For 12,000 years, the Council had maintained power by keeping species separate and dependent. The Soul Accords would change everything. High Arbiter Velas leaned forward. "And if a species chooses not to sign these accords, then they are free to continue as they are," Kang Hana replied. "We will not force anyone to join us. That would make us no better than what we are trying to replace." She was a slender being with skin like silver mist and eyes that seemed to look through solid matter. Her voice was soft, but carried through the entire chamber. "The Aeon endorsed this proposal," she said. "We have watched humanity closely since their arrival in this chamber. We have sensed their hearts and minds. They mean what they say. This is an opportunity the galaxy has not had in millennia." Other delegates began to speak. Some supported the proposal. Some opposed it. The debate grew heated. Then a voice cut through the noise. "I challenge the human ambassador." Everyone turned. A massive Koran warrior had entered the chamber. He was not Morath, but he bore similar markings of rank. His scales were dark red, and his eyes burned with hatred. "I am General Krath," he announced, "cousin of Morath. My family has been dishonored by these mammals. I invoke the right of challenge. The human ambassador must face me in combat, or admit that her species is made of cowards." The chamber fell silent. The right of challenge was an ancient tradition. Under council law, it could not be refused without shame. Ambassador Kang Hana smiled. "I accept your challenge." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "But," she continued, "I invoke my right to name a champion." Krath sneered. "What champion? Your old admiral? Your female scholar?" Commodore Quan Tewu stepped forward. "She means me." He walked down to the center of the chamber and faced the Koran general. Krath was twice his size, with claws that could tear through steel. Tewu smiled. "I've been wanting to do this for a year." The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. Krath was stronger and larger, but he was also slow. He relied on his size to intimidate opponents before crushing them with brute force. He had never faced someone who was not afraid of him. Tewu moved like water. He dodged the general's attacks, struck at weak points in his armor, and refused to stay still. Every time Krath thought he had cornered the human, Tewu was already somewhere else. The final blow came when Krath overextended a strike. Tewu ducked under his arm, grabbed the general's head, and drove his knee into the Koran's throat. Krath collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. According to tradition, Tewu should have killed him. That was what Koran warriors expected in defeat. Instead, Tewu stepped back and extended his hand. "Get up," he said. Krath stared at him. No one had ever spared a Koran after a challenge duel. It was unthinkable. "Get up," Tewu repeated. "We're not your enemies. We don't want to destroy the Koran. We just want to be left alone to build our own future. If you can accept that, there's no reason we can't be allies." The chamber was absolutely silent. Slowly, painfully, Krath reached up and took Tewu's hand. The human pulled him to his feet. No one spoke for a long moment. Then observer Silith began to applaud. It was a human gesture she had learned, and it spread through the chamber. Other delegates joined in. The sound grew until it filled the massive space. As the Mugonghua flew away from Station Vega, Dr. Li Yuna received one final message from observer Silith. "There are others who wish to laugh," it read. "Will you teach them?" Yuna showed it to Ambassador Kang Hana. The two women looked at each other and smiled. "Reply to her," Kang Hana said. "Tell her yes. Tell her this is just the beginning." Outside the ship's windows, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. For 12,000 years, the galaxy had been ruled by fear. Species submitted because they believed they had no choice. But humanity had shown them something different. They had shown that courage could defeat power, that laughter could defeat fear, that one word spoken at the right time could change history. No, such a human word. And now, because of that word, the galaxy would never be the same. On a distant world, in a hidden meeting place, representatives of a dozen species gathered to discuss the Soul Accords. They had all been conquered, or controlled, or absorbed by the Council at some point in their histories. They had all believed resistance was impossible. But the humans had proven otherwise. One of them stood up to speak. He was an elderly creature with fur like silver and eyes like amber. "Our ancestors submitted because they thought they had no choice," he said. "We will not make that mistake again. If the humans can stand against the Council, so can we. It is time for us to laugh too." And one by one, they did. The sound echoed across the stars. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning in Busan, and it changed everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. Admiral Park Min-ho was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alert came through. He was a tall man in his mid-50s, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. He set down his cup and walked to the communication center, where dozens of officers were already gathered around a single screen. "What do we have?" he asked. A young officer turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, it's not from any of our ships. It's not from Earth at all. The signal came from outside our solar system." Park Min-ho felt his heart beat faster, but his face showed nothing. Humanity had been traveling among the stars for 80 years now. They had colonized 12 worlds and built a fleet of warships to protect them. But in all that time, they had never found another intelligent species. Until now. Dr. Lee Yuna arrived within the hour. She was the best xenolinguist on Earth. A woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She had spent her entire career preparing for a moment that most people thought would never come. "The language is complex," she said after studying the transmission for several hours. "But there are patterns, mathematical sequences that serve as a key. Whoever sent this wanted us to understand it." By midnight, she had translated the message. She read it aloud to Admiral Park Min-ho and a room full of Earth's most important military leaders. "To the species known as humans," she began, "you have been observed. Your expansion into the stars has been noted by the Galactic Council, the governing body of 47 civilizations that have maintained peace and order in this region of space for 12,000 years. You are hereby summoned to appear before the Council at Station Vega within 30 standard cycles. Failure to appear will result in corrective integration. This is not a request. High Arbiter Veloz, voice of the Council." The room was silent. "Corrective integration," one general repeated. "What does that mean?" Dr. Lee Yuna looked at him. "I don't know yet, but it doesn't sound friendly." The World Council met 3 days later in Geneva. Leaders from every nation on Earth argued about what to do. Some wanted to ignore the message. Some wanted to send weapons. Some wanted to surrender immediately to whoever these aliens were. Ambassador Kang Hana listened to all of them without speaking. She was a woman in her mid-40s with a reputation for being impossible to intimidate. She had negotiated peace treaties between nations that had been at war for centuries. She had stared down dictators and never blinked. When everyone else had finished talking, she stood up. "We will go," she said simply. "We will meet these aliens. We will listen to what they have to say, and we will respond as humans have always responded to those who try to tell us what to do." "And how is that?" someone asked. Kang Hana smiled. "On our own terms." 2 weeks later, the flagship Mugunghwa departed from Earth's orbit. It was the largest ship humanity had ever built, carrying 500 crew members and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Behind it flew 20 escort vessels commanded by Captain Kwon Tae-woo. Tae-woo was a man in his late 30s who had never lost a battle. He was bold to the point of recklessness and loyal to the point of death. His crew loved him because he treated them like family. His enemies feared him because he fought like he had nothing to lose. "You think these aliens are dangerous?" he asked Admiral Park Min-ho over the communication channel. "I think anything that has ruled 47 civilizations for 12,000 years is very dangerous," Park Min-ho replied. "But I also think they've never met anyone like us." The journey to the Vega system took 18 days. Dr. Lee Yuna spent every hour studying the data they had received with the original message. It contained basic information about the Galactic Council, its history, and its members. "They call themselves the Guardians of Order," she told Ambassador Kang Hana one evening. "They claim to bring peace and stability to younger species." "And what happens to species that don't want their peace and stability?" Dr. Lee Yuna was quiet for a moment. "I've been looking into that. there are references to species that refused the Council's guidance. Dozens of them over the centuries. What happened to them? They don't exist anymore. Some were absorbed into other civilizations. Some were relocated to controlled worlds, and some just disappeared from the records entirely. Kang Hana nodded slowly. So no one has ever said no. No one who survived. The ambassador looked out the window at the stars rushing past. Somewhere ahead, an ancient civilization was waiting to tell humanity what it could and couldn't do. They had done this countless times before. They had crushed or absorbed every species that stood in their way. But they had never met humans. Then I suppose, Kang Hana said quietly, we'll have to be the first. The Mugunghwa dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vega system. What they saw took their breath away. Station Vega was not a space station. It was a ring built around an entire planet, so massive that Earth could have fit inside it 1,000 times. Lights glittered across its surface like a galaxy made solid. My God, Captain Taewoo whispered over the radio. Admiral Park Min-ho stared at the impossible structure. 12,000 years of civilization had built that. 12,000 years of power. And humanity had been flying among the stars for less than a century. But he thought of Earth. He thought of everything his people had survived. Ice ages and plagues, wars and famines. They had burned their own world and rebuilt it. They had split the atom and nearly destroyed themselves. And then they had reached for the stars anyway. The aliens had built a ring around a planet. Humans had crawled out of extinction 6 times. Park Min-ho opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, maintain formation. We go in together. Remember what your ancestors survived to get you here. He paused. We are humanity, and we bow to no one. The fleet moved forward into the unknown. Station Vega was even larger up close. The human fleet looked like insects approaching a mountain as they moved toward the docking area. Ambassador Kang Hana stood at the bridge window and felt very small for the first time in her life. But she did not let it show. An alien voice came through the communication system. It spoke in perfect Korean, which meant they had been studying humanity for longer than anyone had realized. Human vessels, you will dock at Platform 9. Your delegation will be escorted to your quarters. Weapons are not permitted inside the station. Leave all arms on your ships. Captain Kwon Tae-woo laughed. They want us to walk in there naked? We will follow their rules, Admiral Park Min-ho said calmly, for now. The delegation that left the Mugunghwa was small. Ambassador Kang Hana led the group, followed by Admiral Park Min-ho, Dr. Lee Yuna, and 4 security officers who looked uncomfortable without their weapons. Captain Tae-woo remained with the fleet, ready for anything. The inside of the station was overwhelming. The corridors were built for creatures much larger than humans. The ceilings rose so high they disappeared into shadow. Aliens of every shape and size walked past them, some on 2 legs, some on 4, some on none at all. Most of them stopped to stare at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disgust. Their escort was a tall insectoid creature with 4 arms and eyes that reflected light like black mirrors. It said nothing as it led them through the maze of corridors. The quarters they were given were small and plain. Dr. Lee Yuna examined the walls and found monitoring devices hidden everywhere. They're watching us, she said quietly. Of course they are, Kang Hana replied. Let them watch. The next morning, the delegation was brought to the council chamber. It was a vast circular room, with seats rising up on all sides like a stadium. Representatives from all 47 species filled those seats, thousands of alien eyes looking down at the small group of humans standing in the center. At the highest point of the chamber sat High Arbiter Velas. He was ancient even by alien standards. A towering insectoid covered in ceremonial armor, that glittered with precious metals. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Humanity," he said, "you have answered the summons. This is wise. The Council welcomes all species who seek guidance and protection." Ambassador Kang Hana bowed her head slightly. "We thank the Council for its welcome. You have expanded quickly for such a young species," Velas continued. 12 worlds in less than a century. Impressive in a primitive way. But uncontrolled expansion creates instability. The Council exists to prevent such instability. He gestured with one of his many arms, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a list of demands written in human languages. "These are the integration protocols," Velas announced. "All new species must accept them to join the galactic community. They are not negotiable." Dr. Lee Yuna read the list and felt her stomach drop. The first demand required humanity to surrender 60% of its colonized systems to Council administration. The second limited Earth's military to 50 ships. The third required complete genetic cataloging of all humans for galactic security purposes. The fourth demanded that humanity adopt the Council's government model, eliminating Earth's more diverse nations and cultures. The fifth required the discontinuation of any cultural or religious practices that the Council considered destabilizing. It was surrender. A reptilian creature in the seats above them leaned forward. His scales were dark green, and his eyes burned with contempt. This was Delegate Morath of the Koran hegemony, and he had hated humans from the moment he first saw their ships. "Look at them," Morath said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Fragile little mammals playing with starships. They should be grateful the Council offers them any terms at all." Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Some species clearly agreed with him. Admiral Park Min-ho's hands curled into fists at his sides, but he said nothing. This was not his battle to fight. Ambassador Kang Hana looked up at Velas with a calm expression. "These terms are significant. We request time to consult with our government on Earth before responding." Velas made a sound that might have been amusement. "Of course, we grant you 3 cycles to make your decision, but understand this, human. Every species that has stood where you stand has accepted these terms. Every single one. Those who hesitated too long came to regret it. The threat was clear." That night, the human delegation gathered in their quarters. Dr. Lee Yuna had spent the day researching the species that had refused the Council's demands in the past. "I found records of a species called the Ventari," she said. "They refused integration 2,000 years ago. The Council sent a fleet to their homeworld. They were given a choice between submission and extinction. They chose submission, and their culture was erased. Their descendants now serve other species as laborers." "And the ones who didn't submit?" Admiral Park Min-ho asked. "There's a species called the Orath. They fought back. The Council burned their worlds to ash. Nothing remains of them but cautionary tales." The room was heavy with silence. Ambassador Kang Hana sat by the window, looking out at the endless lights of the station. Somewhere out there, 47 civilizations were waiting for humanity to kneel. "They've done this for 12,000 years, she said quietly. "They have a system. A species appears. They make demands. The species submits or dies. It works because no one has ever broken the pattern." "We can't fight them," Park Min-ho said. "Not yet. Their fleets are 100 times the size of ours." "I know. So what do we do?" Kang Hana turned from the window. Her eyes were hard. "We change the pattern." She opened a communication channel to Earth. It took hours for the signal to reach home, and hours more for the response to return. But when it came, it was exactly what she had hoped for. The World Council had voted unanimously. Humanity would not accept the integration protocols. They would not surrender their worlds, their ships, their freedom, or their identity. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Admiral Park Min-ho looked at the message for a long time. Then he looked at Kong Hana. "They'll come for us," he said. "When we refuse, they'll send their fleets." "I know. We might not survive." Kong Hana smiled, and there was something fierce in that smile. "Humanity has almost not survived many times before, and yet here we are." She stood up and straightened her uniform. "Tomorrow, I'm going to do something no one in this galaxy has ever done. I'm going to laugh in their faces and tell them no." Park Min-ho stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled too. "I'd like to see that." "You will, Admiral. You will."